The man who has been the top manager of Maine's commercial fishing industry is stepping down and heading into retirement.
Pat Keliher has held that job longer than anyone before and is winning praise from all sides for his work. 207's Don Kerrigan, who has covered the fishing industry in Maine for decades, talked to the commissioner before today's announcement.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. You know, Pat Keliher had led conservation groups and then oversaw Maine's Atlantic salmon program before being named commissioner, and says he had to learn very fast.
Whether it's dealing with lobstermen, regulating scallop catches, or understanding right whales and federal rules, Pat Keliher says there is a reality about holding his job in state government.
I've had people tell me that this is the hardest job. This and DHHS commissioner is probably the two hardest jobs.
Keliher says he learned that lesson as soon as he was sworn in by then Governor Paul LePage 14 years ago.
Well, the first year I had to deal with a massive change in scallop regulations. The Elva fishery went nuts. And 2012 was when the price crashed on lobster.
That's right.
And I'm looking around, it's like nobody told me I was signing up for this.
Turns out he handled it, and over the years has earned the trust of most fishermen, something not every commissioner has been able to do. And when Governor Mills took over, fishermen asked her to keep Keliher on the job.
The governor called me up on Christmas Eve and said, "Hey, you want to stick around?" And I said, yeah, I would.
And those last 6 years have been packed with problems. Biggest of all, Maine's biggest fishery, lobsters.
How difficult is that relationship? Because you sometimes are their friend, but you also sometimes have to drop the hammer on them.
This fishery has gone from, a 20 million pound fishery in the 70s and 80s to a peak of 132 million pounds of landings, and we've now dropped 46 million pounds from that high. So we are in a situation now with the resource that's starting to change. Now, I don't want to give the impression that it's in trouble, right? The overall resource is very healthy if you look at it from where it was historically. But we're also in a very different time with our marine environment.
Meaning climate change, which helped to power the huge increase in lobster catches, but now is apparently pushing lobsters out towards deeper and colder water. Fishermen and regulators feeling that pressure.
There's going to have to be some really serious conversations with the industry, and they've started.
But it's not easy. A federal conservation proposal to raise the minimum legal size of lobsters, which Keliher supported, ran into a huge tidal wave of opposition from fishermen, and it boiled over at a meeting in January. Keliher then dropped the plan, and eventually the federal agency did too. But he says the industry still has to come to grips with the need for change.
They need to come up with some ideas to make sure that this fishery is resilient in the future, in the face of climate change, in the face of whale regulations, in the face of profitability, right? Those are the three things that are really facing the lobster industry. And the Commissioner of Marine Resources can't manage this fishery for profitability. That has to come from the lobster industry.
And about those whale regulations, the industry and the state teamed up to fight federal whale rules they said could shut down Maine's lobster fishery. Ultimately, Keliher helped convince Congress to delay it to 2028 and provide millions of dollars for research.
So we have 30 people doing assessment work on where and when right whales are in the Gulf of Maine in the footprint of the lobster fishery. And so we can look at where's the fishing and where are the whales.
He says it's working, and earlier this winter, when aerial surveys showed a big gathering of whales near Jeffrey's Ledge on the Maine-New Hampshire border, the department was able to use other data to warn fishermen away.
Is the right whale situation still the biggest issue for your successor to manage?
Yeah, I think if you look at lobster and whales, right, where the population of lobsters are going and the whale issue, is definitely the biggest issue facing the industry and the agency.
The storms last year smashed Maine's working waterfront, and the department suddenly had to lead the recovery efforts. Then there's aquaculture, a $20 million industry and growing, and the continuing need, unlike almost any other state agency, to work with the industry, sometimes one-on-one.
Well, I have kitchen table conversations, and
Literally?
yeah, literally. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many times I've ended up sitting at a counter in a coffee shop or talking at somebody's kitchen table about what the future of a fishery might be.
It's a style that has won Keliher a lot of friends in the fishing industry, though certainly not everyone. He grew up helping an uncle fish for lobsters, so understands that world as well as government.
What's your biggest piece of advice to them?
Listen. When you walk into a meeting, listen. Don't ever walk into a meeting with your mind made up.
It worked for him, says Pat Keliher, and after 14 years, Maine's fishing industry and all who depend on it will have someone else to do the listening.
Pat Keliher is retiring when, at least by my standards, he's still a young guy. He plans to do a lot of hunting and fishing, train bird dogs, maybe do a little guiding. He does have a Maine Guides license, but he'll still be on the job for next weekend's annual Maine Fishermen's Forum, and I expect he'll be hearing some applause there.
You're right. That is a job where the flack never ends.
Correct.
Always incoming.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Don.